If I told you that the idea of Adam being the first may not match the Bible startling for millennia, people are taught Adam and Eve was humanity's beginning. Only two humans created directly by God. First off, Genesis doesn't offer us one creation narrative, it gives us two. And these two accounts don't completely coincide in Genesis 1:26-27. On the sixth day, God created man. More than one man described in multiple terms, male and female. He made them. Humanity collectively is brought into life suddenly all at once. No names, no garden, no dust or ribs. Only humanity built in God's image, granted sovereignty over the earth and told to be productive and multiply. But then we change the page to Genesis 2, and abruptly, the narrative shifts here. God makes Adam singular from the dust of the earth in a far more personal and intimate act of creation. Adam is placed in a specific location, the Garden of Eden, a cultivated paradise. Different from the untamed world of Genesis 1, and unlike the humanity of Genesis 1, Adam isn't created beside a lady. Eve doesn't emerge until later, made from Adam's rib. Now, here's where it gets pretty fascinating. The two storylines don't merely differ in detail, they blatantly contradict each other in the order of creation. In Genesis 1, humanity is created after plants and animals, but in Genesis 2, Adam comes first, then the vegetation, then the animals, and eventually Eve. How do we reconcile this? Are these two tales portraying the same incident? Or are them telling us about two fully diverse acts of creation? If Genesis 1 describes the creation of male and female humans over the earth, might there have been other humans living outside of Eden before or with Adam and Eve? And if so, what does that signify for everything we think we know about the origins of humanity? It doesn't stop there. The name Adam itself adds another dimension of intrigue in Hebrew. Adam signifies man or humankind. It's not inherently an appropriate name. It's a phrase that could refer to mankind as a whole. So was Adam an individual, or was he emblematic of an entire population of early people? Or might he have been just one of many picked for a special function in God's design? While others existed somewhere, let's not forget about the world Adam is placed in Genesis 2. After Adam's creation, God creates a garden specifically for him. But what about the rest of the earth? It's wild, untamed, and seems already filled with life later in the narrative. When Adam and Eve sunk his exiled Pisht, he goes to a spot termed Nod, where he worries for his life and finds a wife who were the individuals living there. Where did Cain's wife come from, if Adam and Eve were actually the only humans alive? During that moment, they questions rip enormous holes in the conventional view of Adam as the first and only human. What if Genesis 1 is depicting the birth of humanity as, hey, imagine if men and women spread across the earth, while Genesis 2 zooms in on one single man, Adam chosen to be the center of the biblical story? It's not just probable, it's absolutely plausible based on the text itself. When we read Genesis 1:26-27, there's a deep statement that requires attention. Let we make man in our image after our resemblance, and then male and female he created them. This isn't a vague reference, it's a direct claim that humanity, both male and female, was made. Genesis 1 paints a picture of humanity's creation as something universal, global even. There's no Garden of Eden referenced here. No localized focus. Humankind is created and immediately given a monumental role. Sovereignty over the earth, over every living creature. They're told to be fruitful and proliferate, and to spread throughout the face of the earth. This is expansive, dynamic, and points to the presence of more than merely two individuals. The wording here is critical. It's plural from the beginning. Let us make man in our image, God declares, and then it follows male and female. He produced them. The transition between us and them isn't accidental. It's an intentional choice of terms that imply collective creation. This is humanity as a species, not a solitary couple. And yet conventional interpretations frequently strive to fit this into the narrative of Adam and Eve from Genesis 2, treating them as the first and only humans. However, let's stand back for a moment. The text doesn't directly name Adam and Eve in Genesis 1. It doesn't place them in Eden. It doesn't even indicate they're the only ones on earth. These details are conspicuously absent, and that absence is telling when you compare this with the larger concepts of Genesis 1. It becomes obvious that the scope of the chapter isn't local or individual. It's cosmic and universal. God is establishing humanity's position in the created order. This isn't only about one garden or one couple. It's about a species released loose onto the earth to blossom and take charge. The Hebrew term for man used here is Adam. Although it's not a proper noun, it's a word that pertains to humankind collectively. This isn't a secret detail, it's right there in the language. Yet for centuries, this plural collective creation has been disregarded or rejected in favor of a narrative that focuses exclusively on Adam and Eve. But consider this. The command to be fruitful and multiply for humanity. To fulfill this command, wouldn't it make more sense if Genesis 1 describes the simultaneous formation of many humans across the earth? This creation narrative doesn't confine itself to a single man and woman. It's expansive, suited for a thriving, growing population. The implication is clear. The Genesis 1 lays the stage for a larger human story, one that doesn't begin and end with Adam and Eve. Genesis 1 doesn't explain humanity's creation as a special occasion for a chosen pair. It's an act of divine creativity on a gigantic scale. Humanity is built in God's image, not one man or one woman, but all of humanity. This divine image is shared collectively, not individually. It's a trait of the human race, not a title bestowed upon two singular figures. Thus, why has this interpretation been sidelined? Why have we been educated to view Adam and as the exclusive representatives of Genesis 1, despite the text itself suggesting? Otherwise, could it be that centuries of doctrine have been shaped more by tradition than by the exact words of the Bible? One of the most fascinating features of the Bible's creation story lies in its sequencing. Precisely how Genesis 1 and Genesis 2 appear to tell the same narrative in absolutely different ordering. This isn't some minor disparity, it's a glaring difference. It has puzzled scholars, theologians, and interested readers for centuries. In Genesis 1, the time frame is clear and ordered. First, the skies and the earth are generated, light separated from darkness seas are split, dry land appears, greenery springs up, and then animals are brought forward. Humanity comes last on the sixth day as the culmination of this grand cosmic process. It's a lyrical, almost rhythmic unfolding of events, with each day building toward a climax. Now enter into Genesis 2, and it's like you've wandered into a completely another version of the story here. The sequence is reversed. Adam is formed before plants and animals. The Bible even says that no bushes had yet appeared on the earth because there was no one to work the ground. Then, after Adam is made, God plants the Garden of Eden and causes trees to grow. Animals are made next, presumably as an attempt to find a companion for Adam. Finally, Eve is formed from Adam's rib as the solution to his solitude. This isn't a subtle transition. The order of creation in Genesis 2 entirely appends. The structure of Genesis 1 plants come after Adam, not before. Animals are developed in response to Adam's needs, not as part of an earlier independent creation. And most strikingly, humanity doesn't appear together as male and female. Instead, Adam is created alone with Eve, emerging only after a series of occurrences. These paradoxes aren't easy to reconcile, and they raise a serious question about the intent behind these two accounts. Why would the Bible mention two storylines with such remarkable differences? Some think that Genesis 1 is a larger universal account, while Genesis 2 focuses on a specific regional event. But that explanation doesn't address the reversal in the order of creation. The shift isn't merely regarding scope, it's about the very nature of the story being presented. The consequences of this disparity are great. Genesis 1 shows creation as a systematic procedure, one that follows a divine logic. Humankind is formed, last representing its status as the pinnacle of creation. Genesis 2, on the other hand, is a lot more intimate and experimental. Adam is formed first, nearly as if the starting point for anything else. It's a hands-on scenario. where God reacts to Adam's needs, planting a garden, creating animals, and eventually constructing Eve. The two timings suggest two quite distinct views on humanity's role in the globe. In Genesis 1, mankind is part of a magnificent interconnected order. In Genesis 2, Adam becomes the center of the plot, with the rest of creation presumably revolving around him. This divergence raises deeper questions about the nature of these texts. Were they written by different authors with distinct perspectives? Many experts feel that Genesis 1 and Genesis 2 stem from distinct sources, each reflecting a distinctive theological viewpoint. Genesis 1 is supposed to belong to the priestly tradition, emphasizing structural order and the transcendence of God. Genesis 2, meanwhile, is credited to the Yahwist tradition, which emphasizes on God's personal relational nature. But here's where things get even more intriguing. Genesis 2 doesn't merely show a different order of events, it also adds a totally new dynamic between humans and the natural environment. In Genesis 1, humanity is created to rule over the earth. In Genesis 2, Adam is placed in Eden to work it and take care of it. The emphasis changes from dominion to stewardship, from cosmic authority to intimate responsibility. The name Adam is one of the most recognizable in history for many. It quickly invokes the idea of a solitary man, the first of his kind, walking in the Garden of Eden. But what if the name itself communicates a more sophisticated story, one that challenges this typical picture and opens up fully new possibilities about humanity's beginnings? In Hebrew, the word Adam isn't only a name, it's a phrase that means human or of mankind. It's utilized throughout the Bible to refer to humanity in general, not only to a specific individual. The term is strongly connected to Adamar, denoting ground or earth, stressing the relationship between humans and the soil from which they were formed. This linguistic relationship isn't only poetic, it's foundational to understanding how ancient writers perceived humanity's relationship to the natural world. Here's the exciting portion in the early chapters of Genesis. Adam doesn't initially function as a proper noun. It's not Adam as we conceive of it today. In the original Hebrew, the text often speaks about the Adam Har. Adam, a generic word for a human being. It's only later, as the narrative reveals, that Adam begins to be used as a proper name for an individual. This small variation in usage carries enormous implications. The early use of the Adam argues that the figure we name Adam might have been meant to signify humanity as a whole, not just one man. The attention isn't on his personality, but on his link to all humans, past, present, and future. In this sense, Adam isn't only a person, it is a symbol, an archetype of the human condition. He encapsulates the universal truths about what it is to be human, created from the earth, enlivened by divine breath, and located into a world full with beauty and accountability. This broader interpretation gains even more weight when you consider how the Bible employs Adam in other contexts. Throughout the Old Testament, the term appears in texts that clearly pertain to humanity collectively. For example, in Psalm 8, the psalmist marvels at how God has blessed Adam, humanity, with glory and honor, giving them dominion over creation. Here, Adam isn't Adam, the individual, it's humanity, as a species. Even in Genesis itself, there's a time that the symbolic nature of Adam becomes abundantly obvious when God curses the ground after the fall. He declares, "By the sweat of your brow, you will devour your nourishment until you return to the earth, since from it you were stolen, for dust you are, and to dust you will return." Turn. This isn't only a curse for Adam the man, it's a universal reality concerning all humans, a reminder of our shared values and our relationship to the earth. But let's take this one step further. If Adam was initially a communal term, may it indicate that the figure of Adam in Genesis 2 is less about one man and more about humanity's beginnings. As a whole, could the story of Adam and Eve be a symbolic tale regarding the origin of humankind, rather than the biography of two literal individuals? This notion isn't only a modern reinterpretation, it has roots in antiquity. Jewish thinking, rabbinic literature commonly explore the symbolic dimensions of Adam, perceiving him as a reflection of humanity's spiritual and moral struggles. The symbolic reading of Adam also opens the door to a deeper awareness of his name's connection to Adamar, In this view, Adam isn't merely the first guy is the earthling, the one who represents humanity's unique place as beings evolved from the dust particles of the ground while bearing the divine picture. This duality, earth and spirit, dust and divinity, captures the essence of what it is to be human. And then there's the genesis of Eve in Genesis 2. Eve is created from Adam's rib. But the Hebrew term used here, Kela, can additionally mean side. This detail has triggered decades of dispute about its symbolic meaning. Some old interpretation argue that Adam and Eve were originally a single being split into two to produce the first man and woman. If true, this further underscores the idea of Adam as a universal archetype rather than a solitary individual. The narrative of Cain, Adam and Eve's firstborn son, contains one of the most ignored mysteries in the Bible after slaying his brother Abel. Cain is challenged by God and cursed to wander the earth. But what occurs next is where things get intriguing. Cain shouts out saying, "My penalty is more than I can endure. Anyone who finds me will kill me." Anyone who exactly is Cain, terrified of if Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel were the only humans on earth at the moment. Where are these others came from? And it doesn't stop there. In the very next verses, Cain leaves the presence of the Lord, settles in the land of Nod east of Eden, and marries a wife. Not only does he find people in Nod, yet he also constructs a city, an area that necessarily necessitates a population far more than just a handful of family members. This section of Genesis raises major questions concerning the conventional conception of Adam and Eve as the sole progenitors of the human race. The presence of persons outside of their personal family suggests that the globe was already filled with other people, persons who, intriguingly, are not intimately related to Adam and Eve. In the narrative, the land of Nod isn't described as an empty wilderness. It's a named location, implying it was known to the writer, and perhaps to the audience of the text. The simple fact that Cain can settle there and start a new life indicates the existence of a civilization capable of sustaining him. The text doesn't clarify where these people came from, and that silence has sparked centuries of conjecture. One option is that these people were part of the humanity created in Genesis 1, that male and female, who were commanded to be productive and proliferating and fill the earth. If Genesis 1 and Genesis 2 describe different acts of creation, as some scholars argue, therefore Cain's wife and the residents of Nod could belong to a unique lineage of humans distinct from Adam and Eve's family. Another interpretation derives from ancient Jewish traditions, which suggests that the creation of Adam and Eve wasn't necessarily the first or only creation. Among humans, certain rabbinic sources propose the existence of pre-Adamite humans, communities or populations that existed before the tale of Adam begins in Genesis 2. In this view, Adam and Eve indicate the commencement of a specific ancestry, one chosen by God for a unique role in his goal while other humans existed independently. Cain's fear of being killed further reinforces the assumption that other individuals were already present. His prayer to God wouldn't make sense if no one else existed in response. God marks Cain with a sign to protect him, assuring because everyone who encounters him will not damage him. This interaction assumed the existence of a greater population that Cain could confront while his roaming. Then there's the city building. A city isn't a one-man task. It demands labor resources and a population to inhabit it. Cain, calling the city after his son Enoch, argues that it was built as a legacy for his family, because the very presence of such a settlement indicates a network of connections, trade, and social structures that go far beyond Adam and Eve's immediate descendants. The pre-Adamite idea originates from the idea that Genesis 1 and Genesis 2 explain two distinct acts of creation. In Genesis 1, we observe the creation of humanity as a species, male and female. He formed them a population scattered around the earth. This mankind is given a general command: be fruitful and multiply, flood the earth, and dominate it. There's no mention of Adam Eden or the intimate personal details found in Genesis 2. This creation is huge, plural, and global in scope. Genesis 2, on the other hand, shifts focus. Adam is created from the dust of the ground and placed in Eden, a unique and cultivated environment. This isn't a broad creation of mankind. It's the beginning of an individual narrative. a chosen bloodline. The pre-Adamite doctrine depicts Adam and Eve as representatives of this specific group appointed by God to carry out a distinct part in human history. While other humans existed outside the garden, ancient Jewish traditions present intriguing support for this idea. Rabbinic literature, such as the Midrash, contains references to pre-Adamic beings. These scriptures show that God may have produced other beings before Adam, either as a distinct production or as part of a continuous divine process. Some writings even allude about past worlds. They were produced and destroyed before the world portrayed in Genesis. Early Christian intellectuals also examined the likelihood of pre-Adamites in the 17th century. Theologian Isaac Larry argued that humans mentioned in Genesis 1 were separate from Adam and Eve, whom he saw as the progenitors of the Jewish people according to Larperia. The Bible silence concerning the origin of Cain's wife and the people of Nod refers to the presence of humans before or apart from Adam's lineage. His contentious beliefs were condemned as heretical at the time, but they opened the door to a deeper exploration of this possibility. From a theological perspective, the pre-Adamite theory addresses some of the discrepancies and gaps in the Genesis narrative. It explains the presence of other individuals in Cain's story, the rapid spread of civilizations, and the command to fill the earth as something already in progress. It also argues that Adam and Eve's story isn't about the biological origin of all mankind, but concerning the commencement of God's covenant with a special group. Beyond theology, the pre-Adamite idea aligns intriguingly with scientific discoveries about human origins. Fossil evidence reveals that anatomically modern people have existed for hundreds of thousands of years, long before the usual biblical time frame places Adam and Eve. This must contradict the Bible. Instead, it argues that the Genesis tale functions on a different level, focused on a certain narrative rather than offering an entire history of humankind. The consequences of the pre-Adamite theory are profound. If people existed before Adam, then the account of Genesis becomes not a comprehensive account of humanity's beginning, but a focused story of one family's relationship with God, Adam and Eve, no less significant. Yet their position shifts. They become representatives of a chosen lineage set apart for a divine purpose, while the rest of humanity continues its life outside the garden. This theory also gives light on the universality of the human experience depicted in Genesis. The concepts of fall, exile, and redemption aren't limited to Adam and an Eve. They reflect the struggles of all humanity by admitting the presence of humans outside of Eden. The pre-Adamite theory increases the scope of the biblical narrative, making it richer and more inclusive. The story of Adam has been a cornerstone of religious doctrine for thousands of years. It's the story of humanity's beginnings, the fall from grace, and the need for redemption. Yet when we step back and look at the detailing, the fractures in this conventional interpretation style to show what emerges is a much deeper, more LED narrative, one that questions everything we thought we knew about human origins. This opens up totally new possibilities on how we interpret our place in creation. The notion that Adam and Eve were the sole humans, or maybe the first humans, doesn't hold up under serious investigation. The Bible itself contains hints of other individuals, other stories, and a planet far more crowded than the typical narrative implies, from the numerous creation of humanity in Genesis 1 to the people of Nod in Genesis 4. The text includes clues. They point to a far bigger context. One things many have missed for centuries. This isn't just about filling in gaps in the story. It's about confronting a story that has been simplified throughout time, molded by tradition, handed down as unassailable truth, because truth doesn't need to fear scrutiny. If anything, it grows stronger when confronted, and the truth is the tale of Adam is not lessened by admitting its complexities in reality. It becomes richer, more important, and more relevant when we embrace the layers underlying the surface. The notion that Adam and Eve are the biological ancestors of all humanity has shaped innumerable theological and cultural views, but when we acknowledge that their tale might be about anything far bigger, things symbolic, representative, or even limited to a given bloodline, it allows us to perceive the Bible in a fresh light. It's no longer merely a record of the past. It's a narrative that depicts the universal human experience. This transformation in perspective doesn't invalidate the significance of Adam and Eve. Instead, it situates them within a broader framework. Their story becomes one of many, a chapter in the greater book of human history. They reflect the introduction of divine covenant morality and meaning into the human story, a tale that connects not simply with one group, but with all of us. What's even more remarkable is how this re-examination aligns with the world we see around us. Science and faith, often seen as at odds, begin to converge. Fossil records, genetic evidence, and ancient texts all point to a human history that is far older and more complex than the traditional timeline of Genesis suggests. These aren't contradictions. They're revelations, proof that our understanding of creation is still unfolding. This discovery isn't about undermining faith, it's about strengthening it. By embracing the mystery and grandeur of creation, the Bible, when read carefully, isn't a static document. It's a living, breathing story, one that invites exploration, curiosity, and even questions. By digging deeper into the text, we honor its complexity and its power to inspire everyone who has stayed with me through this exploration. Thank you for being part of this journey. Your curiosity, your willingness to question, and your passion for understanding are what made these conversations so meaningful. If this video made you think, sparked your curiosity, or even challenged your beliefs, I'm glad that's what this is all about. Discovering the layers of truth that make our story as humans so extraordinary. Don't forget to like, share, and comment below with your thoughts. I'd love to hear what you think about these ideas and what questions you have about the mysteries we've uncovered today. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.